All right, it's about that time. It's the Panther-Lair Show here on a Tuesday night, live on YouTube. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com is where you can watch the live stream every Tuesday night at 8:30. Of course, you'll listen to the podcast throughout the week. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. It always occurs to me that I should probably say that. You know, somebody might be tuning in and not know who we are or what we do or why we're doing it or, you know, what's behind all of this thing. Just turn on, what's this Pitt video, this guy talking about Pitt? Who is he? And why should I care what he has to say? I mean, I can't answer the second question, but I can tell you the first. Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. Of course, you should know the website by now, hopefully. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. I like to say it's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, recruiting. You can find it all at Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, we have message boards. And message boards get a bad rap on the internet. And understandably so. I actually don't spend much time on internet message boards aside from Panther-Lair.com. I get my fill of idiocy and knee-jerk reactions and just the other side, as it were, from Twitter and Facebook. I don't need it. I don't need to go to many online forums to find those things, but I do frequent the message boards at Panther-Lair.com because, look, what I do, my day-to-day is writing about and thinking about Pitt. You know what I mean? That's what I do. And people ask me, you know, how can you do a 1 hour podcast a week? Or how can you do a 1 hour radio show, especially when it's in the spring or the summer? And they'll say, you know, how can you do that? How can you come up with an hour's worth of things to think about? It's like, bro, this is what I do all day. Every day I think about Pitt stuff. I mean, I shouldn't say all day, but I mean every day I'm spending some amount of my time thinking about or writing about or talking about, and usually all three, Pitt. I mean, that's just it. I go to the gym in the morning and people are talking to me about Pitt. You know, I come home and I get on the message boards and we're talking about Pitt, and I start working and I'm writing things about Pitt. I talk to family or I see friends and we talk about Pitt. I mean, that's just what it is. And it all, the bright center at the middle of that whole universe is Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, and the message boards right there at Panther-Lair.com, where these Pitt conversations are happening all day, every day. Literally, they really are. I mean, there are posts going on all the time. People are always finding something to talk about regarding Pitt, and whether it's the last game, the next game, recruiting is a big topic, old games, new games, future games, whatever it is. I mean, people are always finding something to talk about. And then every Tuesday night, we get together here at 8:30 on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That's our YouTube channel. And we talk Pitt for an hour or so. And the great thing about it is, you know, on the message boards, we can have interaction. But the podcast, not so much. You know, I mean, the podcast, you just turn it on, you listen to it, and you listen to me prattle on for an hour. And maybe you find it interesting, and maybe you don't, and maybe you have a response to something I'm saying. Maybe you want to say, hey, I disagree about this. Hey, what's, I think you're wrong about that. Or, hey, what's the deal with this guy? Or what's up with that player or this situation? What was the coach's explanation on it? I mean, you have a lot of questions, you know? You can't really do anything about it if you're listening to the podcast on Thursday. I mean, I hope you are listening to it on Thursday or whenever you get a chance to. I appreciate it. But the cool thing about the Tuesday night live stream of the podcast is that you can post comments and post questions. We've already got the active chat stream going. We'll jump into that in a minute and talk to everybody who's already shown up here early in the podcast. We appreciate you guys for checking it out every week. It's great to see some of the same names show up week after week and, get in on the conversation. I mean, I feel like we're old friends now ever since we started doing these live streams in, I don't know, February or whatever it was, 7, 8 months, 6 months, whatever. And we can have a conversation. You know what I mean? You can post your questions or your comments or your reactions. We can have a little back and forth and have a discussion. So if you just listen to the podcast during the week, but you find yourself often having some sort of response to whatever I'm saying, well, check out the live stream on Tuesday nights. Of course, got to give a shout out to Homefield Apparel.com. I'm not wearing a Homefield shirt tonight, but I've been wearing them plenty on the podcast. And if you watch the live stream, you've seen these shirts. If you're on Twitter, you've seen these shirts. If you're on Panther-Lair.com, you've seen these shirts. Homefield has great stuff. They have great gear and great products. And it's I mean, it's mostly t-shirts and sweatshirts, but one, they're super high quality. They're really soft, really comfortable. They fit really well. And then two, they've got great logos. I mean, whether it's Pitt or any of the other schools, they got 50, 60 schools, something like that. And it's just great designs. I mean, they hooked me up with a couple of Pitt shirts, and they hooked me up with a University of Hawaii Rainbow Warrior sweatshirt that is just awesome. I mean, it's a great sweatshirt. I wore it the other night for the first time. It's so soft and so comfortable. It's the same way with the shirts and with the t-shirts. And the logos are great. You know, I mean, they really kind of tried to read the fan base of what kind of designs and phrases the fans would want to see on their shirts. And I would say that one of the great ones that they have of Pitt, it's just a simple score, 13-9. And if you're a Pitt fan, and especially if you're a West Virginia fan, you know what that means. You know what I mean? If you're a Pitt fan, you'll proudly walk around with that on your chest wearing a super comfortable t-shirt with a great logo like that. So Homefield Apparel.com, you want to check them out. For just some outstanding Pitt stuff and a lot of colleges. You know, it's not just Pitt. They roll out a new school every week, and they're really knocking it out of the park with their designs. It's really high quality stuff. Homefieldapparel.com. Go check that out. And we're going to try and get a promo code out to you guys sometime soon. Hopefully we can do that. So we've obviously got a lot to talk about here. I think everybody's rolling in on the podcast, and it's good to see everybody coming in here. You know, we've got a lot to talk about. Pitt really opened the ACC season last Saturday against Syracuse, and yeah, it was a far cry from Austin Peay. You know what I mean? Say what you want about Syracuse, say what you want about the Orange, but they're a little bit better than an FCS team. And we might have made jokes about it beforehand, but I don't think there were any jokes to make. Their offense, they have some issues on offense. There's no question about it. Pitt's defense is going to give a lot of teams issues on offense, but I don't think anybody had any questions about that. I don't think we were concerned about how Pitt's defense was going to stand up or how it was going to perform. It was all about Pitt's offense, and those were our questions coming into the season. And our first glimpse that we got of Pitt's offense going against an FCS opponent, they lit it up. They scored 55 points, or the offense scored 48 or whatever it was, or 46 or something, 49 or something. And the first team offense scored touchdowns on their first 6 possessions, before Kenny Pickett came out of the game. I mean, they were unstoppable. They were pushing the ball down the field. They were running it pretty well. I mean, literally unstoppable. 6 drives, 6 touchdowns. But we all knew that was Austin Peay. But it was our first glimpse. We said, okay, they passed the test. They looked really good against Austin Peay. What are they going to do against not just an FBS opponent, not just a Power 5 opponent, but an ACC opponent? How are they going to stand up when they have to face a team that's much closer to them in talent level? And the truth is, the offense didn't look great. They scored 3 touchdowns, scored 21 points. They had 3 should have been field goals all go awry. So, and that point has been brought up a lot in the aftermath of this game. 21-10, but they had 3 field goals, 2 missed field goals and another where the holder bobbled the snap. If you make those 3 field goals, which you should have, none of them were crazy distances or anything like that, it's 30-10. And 30-10 looks a little different than 21-10. Quite frankly, it doesn't look that far off from what North Carolina did to Syracuse a week earlier when they beat them 31-6. 30-10, 31-6. Pretty much the same thing. And in that game, North Carolina was really held under wraps all game long until the fourth quarter. They scored like 3 touchdowns. It was like a 10-6 game before North Carolina kind of broke it open in the fourth quarter. Pitt didn't necessarily break it open in the fourth quarter. They really kind of controlled the game throughout against Syracuse. They just never were really able to put the game away. They were never able to pull away. And particularly in the second half, there was just a lot of punting and field goal attempts. And the drives just never went anywhere. And I think that was part of the concern coming out of the game, because what you watched in the second half was an offense that just wasn't very potent. You know what I mean? It just wasn't getting a lot done in the second half against Syracuse. They scored 1 touchdown. That was in the third quarter. No scoring in the fourth quarter, which is a bit of a repeat of a problem from last year. And there are a lot of things to talk about with this offense. that idea of repeating issues from last year is a big problem right now. Because what we saw on Saturday, we saw formation penalties, procedure penalties. We saw drop passes. We saw fumbles, whether they were, lost or recovered. And we saw an interception. And those are, if you recall, and I hope you have, if you've listened to this podcast before, you've inevitably heard me talk about this, that those issues, those correctable mistakes, to some extent almost unforced errors of drop passes, fumbles, procedure penalties, and interceptions, those problems were a major issue for the offense last year. 104 of those. Procedure penalties, drop passes, fumbles, interceptions. 104 over the course of 13 games. That's 8 per game. Now, this year's offense is not on that pace just yet. But when you look at the Syracuse game, and you've got three or four procedure, maybe 3 procedure penalties. One of them was declined by Syracuse. But you get 3 procedure penalties. You get a couple fumbles. You get an interception. You got 4 drop passes. It starts to add up. And it cost them drives. It killed drives. And it ended up potentially costing them points. And this was the problem last season. This is where this offense was doomed last season. When you look at games like Miami, and you look at games like Boston College, games they absolutely should have won, but they didn't because their offense fell short. Those were the problems. Those were the issues where you looked at drives and said, this drive was killed by procedure penalties. This drive was killed by a fumble, by an interception. Obviously, those turnovers will do it. Dropped passes. A dropped pass kept Syracuse in the game in 2019 when Nakia Griffin-Stewart had a third down catch in the red zone that either that catch, if he had made it, would have turned into a touchdown on that play, or it would have set up a touchdown. And instead, Pitt had to settle for a field goal. They could have put that game away much sooner if not for that really unforced error. And you could say the same about the Saturday game, this past Saturday's game against Syracuse as well, that they were making those errors. That's the concerning thing, because the biggest thing we needed to see this year was improvement from the 2019 offense to the 2020 offense. That offense had to get better. You knew the defense was going to be really good, and they've been everything I expected them to be, maybe even a little bit more. They've been really good because I think, and I'm going to get into this, I think the linebackers have been better than I expected. Both the starters and the depth, at least one depth player. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think the defense has been at least as good as I expected it to be, if not better. The offense was the question mark. The offense is the question mark. And the offense will continue to be the question mark up until that point when they prove themselves as having improved. They show themselves to have made improvements in the offseason. And we didn't see it against Syracuse. Now, I will say, I think coming out of the game, if you listen to the Drive Home podcast, which I walk out of Heinz Field, I grab my phone as I'm walking out of Heinz Field and click on the voice recorder and just start talking. And I record as I'm walking out of Heinz Field, as I get into the car, as I drive home, and sometimes I need to take a few detours to stretch it out so I can say everything I want to say. But I call it the Drive Home podcast. It's very much an immediate, instant reaction, albeit a few hours after the game ended, but it's an immediate sort of instant reaction podcast of just like, look, here's what I'm thinking about as I'm driving home. And as I left Heinz Field on Saturday, and you probably felt the same way as you watched the game, I thought, boy, there's some major concerns with this offense. I'm really concerned about where this offense is going and what direction it's heading in, and whether it really is going to be any better than it was a year ago, which it's going to have to be in order to win a few games. There are going to be games where they're going to need to outscore opponents. This week very well may be one of them. And there are going to be games where, their defense doesn't give up much, but they're in a tough defensive battle, and they're going to have to get a couple points out of it. And we've seen those games before too. You saw it Miami last year, Notre Dame 2 years ago. I don't know if the games against Miami and Notre Dame this year are going to go that way. I don't know if they're going to play the games against Miami and Notre Dame. I mean, Miami, I assume. Notre Dame already has one game canceled in October. We'll see if Pitt's able to get their game in against the Irish. But you're going to have points where your offense is going to have to go out and score. Beyond just the cliche, like, stupid football, analysis of got to outscore the other team. I mean, you're going to have times where your offense really does take control of the game and establishes itself as the reason for a victory. And as I walked out of Heinz Field on Saturday, I had concerns about whether this offense could actually do it because it looked a whole lot like last year's offense. But I think, I've softened a little bit in the past few days since the game. For one thing, I think Syracuse's defense is tough. I don't know if they're going to end up as the number one, defense in the ACC. They'll go out and they could give up a bunch of points in their next game, and it'll make me look like a fool, and that's fine. But I think their defense is tough. I think it's a tough defense to play against with that three down linemen and extra guys coming, and they do a lot of things up front and try and really make it tough to run, and you don't know where guys are. They also have a really athletic secondary. I think it's a very good set of corners and DBs. Overall, I think it's a challenging game to play. I think they do a good job at creating pressure. They sacked Sam Howell a couple times in the North Carolina game. They gave him similar fits to what they gave Kenny Pickett on Saturday. And so that alleviated my concern a little bit. And I think I would almost go so far as to say that maybe part of the game plan really was accounting for how Syracuse was probably going to play. And so what you saw was a lot of shorter passes. They only had 3 plays that went over 20 yards on offense. And 2 of them went for touchdowns. And the other one was a great catch by DJ Turner on the sideline. We'll talk about him in a minute because I had a little mea culpa to offer on DJ Turner. Not entirely a mea culpa, but, along those lines. But they only had 3 plays. They gained more than 20 yards. They weren't pushing the ball downfield. They weren't trying to attack vertically the way they had against Austin Peay. Now, again, you've got a talent difference between, a difference in the level of competition between Syracuse and Austin Peay. And the things that you were able to do against Austin Peay, you might not necessarily be able to do against Syracuse. But you got to try. You have to try to push the ball downfield, partially to keep the defense honest, and partially because I actually think you have the horses to do it. I think you have the players to get downfield and make plays downfield, to use their speed to create separation and get under the ball and make some big plays. You've got Jordan Addison. You've got DJ Turner. You've got Shockey Jacques-Louis. And none of those guys are big, but they're fast. That's a good place to start. When I was young, I thought you had to have the big guy. The big receiver had to go downfield because he could out-jump guys. You know what I mean? And jump and make those jump ball catches. And there's still value in that. I think Jared Wayne, is a big receiver, unlike anybody else they have on this team, really. And Taysir Mack has a natural kind of ability to make those catches, and it seems like he should be back for Pitt this week. But you don't just need the size. If you have speed and you can create separation, you can get downfield too. Obviously, that's what Pitt's got with Addison and Turner and Jacques-Louis. These guys can move. They can get downfield, and you should be able to attack teams vertically, but they didn't do it against Syracuse. They had some guys out running those routes, but they didn't really take those shots. And I have to, my guess, I would imagine that it had something to do with how Syracuse plays defense, with the talent in their secondary and the way they attack up front, that you might not have had the time to let those plays develop. So I guess I'm not giving anybody a pass, but I'm going to withhold judgment for another week. I'm going to withhold judgment until this week when Pitt plays Louisville. And as anybody who watched the Louisville-Miami game knows, the Cardinals' defense is vulnerable. You can get those plays downfield. You can get in the open field and make those guys miss, and you can find holes in the zone, and you can get downfield on them. You can go. You can send guys vertical, and you can attack that way. And I think you have to. You have to go at them. This has to be a game where the offense is aggressive. And I know you have some concern about Louisville's offense, and they're very good, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. They got a lot of speed. You want to keep those guys off the field as much as you can, but you also want to make them have to score touchdowns. And the way to do that is to attack Louisville's defense. Try and establish the run, of course. You got to do that, and we'll talk about the running backs too. This is like I said, we got a lot of topics I want to get to on this show. I actually wrote them all down. I don't know if you can see it. You don't need to because you won't know which ones I don't get to when I inevitably don't cover all the topics. But, sure, you want to establish the run. You want to try and loosen up the defense, hit some screens, things like that. But you also, you want to go deep. And if you can establish the run and set up play action and take a shot deep to Addison or Turner or Jacques Louis, fine. But, you've got to attack these guys vertically. You've got to get more big plays. They had, 3 passes of 50 yards or more in the Austin Peay game? I don't know if you need that against Louisville, but you should try. You need to do better than only 3 20-yard passes. I can tell you that. That's not going to cut it in this game. You can't ground and pound and keep up with Louisville. And I say that believing that, Pitt's defense is very good. Pitt's defense is very good. But even good defenses will give up plays to good offenses, particularly offenses that have speed like Louisville has. And Louisville's got it at all 3 levels, quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. And I know that's not really 3 levels, but you understand what I'm saying. In terms of those 3 positions, they've got speed all over the place. You're going to give up some plays to them, especially with how Pitt plays defense. You know what I mean? That if they're going to try and attack Louisville's quarterback is going to get some runs. He's going to make some plays. That you should accept that now. We're talking on Tuesday night. You should accept right now that Louisville's quarterback is going to make plays with his feet. He's going to escape on 3rd down and convert a few 3rd downs. And you're going to be really frustrated about it. And you're going to start yelling at Paul Rhodes to fix his damn defense. But guys, Paul Rhodes isn't the defensive coordinator anymore. I'm sorry. And but you're going to yell it though. And their receivers are fast and their running back is fast. You're going to give up plays to them. They're going to score some points. You're not going to hold them to 10 like you did with Syracuse. You're not going to shut them out like you did to Austin Peay. You need to go into this game expecting to need to score 30 plus and probably more, 35, somewhere around there. This has to be a game where you pour it on, kind of like you did against North Carolina last year. Got to go out and score. And to do that, you're going to have to take your shots. It'd be great if you can set up play action. I'm not going to go into this game relying on it because I've yet to see this running game be all that effective. I don't know about you, but I wasn't very impressed by the running game last week against Syracuse. Whether they should have been able to run it against Syracuse or they shouldn't have been able to run it, I don't know. But I know that what I saw from the running game last week is not something that makes me think, it's not something I believe I could count on if I'm Pitt. If I'm Pitt, I'm going into this game believing that I'm going to try to run it if I can, and I'm going to attack with the passing game, and I'm going to attack vertically. I'm going to go downfield because I've got the guys to do it. And that's probably, and I think I did touch on this a little bit on the Drive Home podcast. I think that, part of the reason I haven't, I was going to say something like part of the reason I haven't given up on, Pitt's offense, but that's silly. They've played 2 games. They've played 1 real game. Of course, I'm not giving up on anything, but if you're looking for reasons for optimism, I think you still got to like some of these individual players. Jordan Addison is a star in the making. DJ Turner, and I guess I can get into him right now. DJ Turner, I sat here on this podcast and, on this video, live stream and on the podcast, I wrote about it in the 321 column. I probably talked about it on the Panthers Insider Show. Anywhere I could talk about it the week that he decided to go to Pitt, I talked about it there. And I said, whatever. Caught 24 passes in his career at Maryland. Scored 1 touchdown in his career at Maryland. Not really moved by adding this guy. Maybe he can help out on the punt returns. And part of it was that I was bullish on the wide receivers they had coming back. I like Jordan Addison. I like Jared Wayne. I like Shockey Jacques Louis. I like Taysier Mack. I like Jalen Barden. What do you need this Turner guy for? I guess you got an extra scholarship, take a talented player, whatever. Yeah, I'm going to take that back now because DJ Turner's been pretty damn good for this team. He's been, 7 targets. He's got 7 receptions. He hasn't dropped a pass. He's caught every pass that's been thrown to him so far. Made a great catch on the sideline in that game against Syracuse, 20-yard gain. Had another one that was a 68-yard touchdown or something like that, or 50-yard touchdown or something in the Austin Peay game. He's been outstanding. And I think, here's another guy who adds more speed to this offense. And I don't know what your best combination is, particularly if you get Taysier Mack back, because, If it's me, I want Jordan Addison on the field all the time. I want Shockey Louis on the field all the time, and I want him getting the ball more because I think he still has a lot to give to this offense. I want Taysir Mack on the field all the time. I want Jared Wayne on the field all the time. I want DJ Turner on the field all the time. I just named like 5 guys. I want Jalen Barden on the field all the time. 6 now that I've named. You can't have them all on the field at the same time. But I really like that group, and I think they can make plays if quarterback gets them the ball and gets them the ball in space, gets them the ball downfield. And that's the big question mark of whether they can do it. I believe they can do it. It's a big question mark of whether they will do it. And I think they're going to need to do it this week against Louisville. It's not going to be the case every week. They're not going to have to go out and be that aggressive offensively every week. Your best case scenario, Pitt goes out, they're aggressive offensively this week. They use that aggressive offense to go downfield, score a lot of points, and beat Louisville. And then they're emboldened by that, and they take the confidence from that, and they go forward, making that as sort of their base offensive approach. That they don't revert back to playing more conservative when they go against other opponents that they might not feel like they need to score 40 to beat. That they go out and attack every week. Because it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to have Pitt football 2020 sort of defined by attacking. The defense attacks. The defense gets after the quarterback. The defense gets after the ball carrier. If you have the ball in your hands as a running back or as a wide receiver or as a quarterback, if you touch the football playing against Pitt's defense, you probably expect to get attacked because that's what they do, and that's the reputation they have. And sometimes it hurts them. Pitt will get penalties called against it because it is Pitt, because they have that reputation. But that's a good reputation to have. I think they need that. I mean, if they ended up with that reputation on offense, that they're the kind of offense that's going to attack, it seems to me that would be a good thing. To be in a team that just goes out and attacks on both sides of the ball. And it hasn't always been the case. Even last year, it was not the case. They did not attack on offense. Push the ball downfield. Go vertical. Stretch the field. You've got the players to do it. We'll see if they do. And I think they're going to need to if they're going to beat Louisville. And it would be a huge win. If you can beat Louisville, win a top 25 matchup, keep jumping up the rankings, they'll jump into the top 20 even with the Big Ten coming back. If they beat Louisville at Heinz Field, currently Pitt's ranked, 21? They'll be in the top 20. Maybe top 17, top 16 or something like that, depending on how they look beating Louisville, if they can pull that off. And then, you start getting some real hype. And you have to approach every week very seriously. You can't have a letdown then, against NC State or anything like that. You need to keep rolling. But, the opportunity is there for you to really kind of go out. And, Pat Narduzzi talked after the Austin Peay game about making a statement. Now, this is your opportunity to make a statement to the nation. And I said that after the Austin Peay game when we talked on the Drive Home podcast or on the Tuesday podcast. I said, I think Narduzzi made a statement to his team about how he wanted to be and how aggressive he wanted to be when they beat Austin Peay 55-0. I don't think he made the statement to the nation because nobody cares if you beat up on an FCS team. Well, this is the week where he's got a chance to make a statement to the nation. Regardless of what happened between Louisville and Miami last week, this is a game against a ranked opponent. You do have an opportunity to make a statement if you can go out and beat Louisville. And it's a big opportunity for Pitt. We'll see what they're able to do. Let's jump into the comment section here a little bit. See what people have to say. If I can scroll up, you guys are already very busy. Glad everybody could jump in here. Let's see. Dan Juby says this week is the toughest test for this defense this season, aside from maybe Clemson. Maybe. Just with the speed out there, Dan. I think there. You could definitely make a case that this is maybe the biggest challenge they're going to face. Miami looks real interesting. Miami really, what they did to Louisville, what they were able to score on Louisville, which I think creates some of the optimism that Pitt fans might feel about their own offense going against Louisville. Miami looks pretty potent on offense as well. But yeah, Clemson is the biggest one. I don't know, is Louisville number 2 behind Clemson in terms of offensive threats that Pitt's going to face this year? They might be. Matt Durney says it's a second straight game. They literally had the opponent submit. Syracuse ended the game with 3 timeouts, none called on the last drive. Yeah, I don't know what to make of that, man. I don't know what to make of Dino Babers quitting on his team. I mean, he did. He didn't call a single timeout in the fourth quarter. And it's not like Pitt's offense was stringing together long drives. They didn't really have any extended drives in the fourth quarter until that final drive when they ran 5 plays and gained 24 yards to get into the victory formation. And Dino Babers never called a timeout. It's shocking. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what he said to his team after, and I don't know what his players would have been thinking. Of like, wow, we didn't call a timeout. Dale Gribble says this game should tell us how the season will go. Louisville looked terrible against Miami. Yeah, Dale, I don't tend to think too much of this game is going to tell us what to believe of this season. I mean, last year, they beat UCF in the third, fourth game, something like that. And, did that game tell us how the rest of the season was going to go? Not really. You know what I mean? Each game is its own world. And I mean, there are trends that exist and grow out of week to week that you see, and you could say, well, there's this consistent narrative or this storyline, but I mean, ultimately each game is going to be determined on its own. I don't tend to think too much of, well, this game tells us how this season's going to go. Maybe we'll look back and say, yeah, all the games went that way, but win or lose this week, I'm not gonna say that. Well, if they go out and beat Louisville, I'm not gonna say they're probably going 10-1 this year. And if they lose, I'm not going to say, well, they're probably going 2-9. Corey Dillinger says, my 5-0 question from last week seems like it all comes down to the game this week. Not to overlook NC State and Boston College, but it seems doable if we can get it done against Louisville. Yeah, but again, Corey, kind of, a little bit along the lines of what I said to Dale just now is if they can beat Louisville, they should be in good position to beat NC State and Boston College. Sure. I would have said before the season, I did say before the season, NC State and Boston College were 2 of the 4 games they should win alongside Syracuse and Georgia Tech. We now have a different perspective on Georgia Tech. We have a bit of a different perspective on Boston College. Slightly different perspective on NC State if they ever play games. But we also know that Pitt can't overlook anyone. And I don't think Pitt will overlook anyone. But yeah, if they beat Louisville, then 5-0 should be the goal. I mean, I think that's what they should be shooting for realistically. Leon Moore, 23. Why no Izzy last game? Israel Abanikanda. So that was really interesting. The running back rotation was really interesting. And I don't know what to make of it. I mean, you go into that game against Syracuse, Vincent Davis gets the start, plays the most snaps. And the first running back off the bench was not A.J. Davis, the senior, or Todd Sibley, the redshirt junior. It was Daniel Carter, the redshirt freshman, who came in, played 2 snaps, got 15 yards on his 2 snaps, and then left the game, never returned. Seemed like he got banged up. So already you've got the running back rotation kind of thrown off by the fact that Daniel Carter got hurt. And then eventually A.J. Davis is sort of the number 2 behind Vincent Davis. Todd Sibley runs the Wildcat for a few snaps. Izzy Abanikanda comes in and ran 3 snaps, the first 3 plays of the second half. Didn't get a single handoff. Pitt goes 3 and out. That's it for his day. That's the extent of his playing time. Played a decent amount against Austin Peay. Looked promising against Austin Peay. Hardly played at all. Only 3 snaps against Syracuse. I don't know what to make of it other than it's just if unless he's banged up, it seems to be just a matter of him being a freshman. And not being ready to be trusted in that situation yet. Or trusted with extended reps yet. Now, it's really interesting to see. It was really interesting to see Daniel Carter basically as the number 2 running back, and he has pretty quickly and sort of out of nowhere become the most intriguing back on this team right now. Because, like I say, he came out, first carry goes for 9 yards, next carry goes for 6 yards, he gets hurt, and he leaves the game, never comes back against Syracuse. But he looked really intriguing against Austin Peay. Those 2 carries are really intriguing against Syracuse. He's the guy I want to see getting some extra run. If he can stay healthy, if he's 100% or close to it this week, I want to see Daniel Carter getting the ball. Because I don't know about you, I'm not sold on any of these running backs right now. Vincent Davis shows some flashes. There are obviously some things he can do really well. I don't know if he's an every down running back. And this is the kind of criticism he's always going to hear. And hopefully he uses it as motivation and it drives him to get better. And I think he's a nice football player, but I just don't know if he's an every down back. I think there are things he can do really well. I just don't know if that's one of them. AJ Davis, I've said, I think we just know who he is. You know what I mean? We know who AJ Davis is. And I haven't seen anything to change my mind about that. And I don't think he's a number one running back. Todd Sibley shows a lot of promise when he runs out of the Wildcat. But for some reason, he cannot buy a handoff out of the regular offense. I don't know what it is with the coaches. They just don't see it with Sibley for whatever reason. Abanikanda, really intriguing. I always say, he's right in that middle. He's bigger than Vincent Davis. He's faster than AJ Davis. He's like a mix of the best things of the Davises. But apparently wasn't ready to go last week, so he only gets 3 snaps. And then there's Daniel Carter, redshirt freshman, got a little experience this year. When he's gotten the ball, he's made something happen. Scored a touchdown against Austin Peay. 2 really good carries against Syracuse. He's a bigger back. He's bigger than anybody they have on the roster, I would say. And I think he moves better than a guy like AJ Davis. He's the one I want to see out there. Maybe not as the starter against Louisville. I'm guessing Vincent Davis will get that call again. But I want to see Daniel Carter get some extended reps to see what he can really string together. Really think, he has become the most intriguing back on the roster right now. Michael Tupta III says, Chris, I know you may not have rewatched the game and listened to the ESPN broadcasters, but I noticed a big drop-off in quality of the call of the game with them being remote. Any thoughts? Yeah, I haven't really, I've gone back and watched some individual plays here and there, things I want to check on personnel-wise, where I want to confirm my notes. I take diligent notes. I don't know if you can see, but yeah, you can see it a little bit there. Diligent notes on the game. Scribbling constantly. Trying to keep track of personnel, trying to keep track of who's in the game, who came out, what formations they're in, and what packages, what personnel they're using. But every now and then there's something I need to confirm. I need to go back and look at. So I'll go back and look at it on Watch ESPN, the ACC network, and I'll check it out there. But I never, I don't watch the whole game play by play. So I don't really notice the broadcasters much. I think it's tough to call the game remote. I think there is something to be said for seeing the whole field and really kind of, at any point, just look down. You can see what's happening on the sideline. You can see what's happening in the backfield. You can see what's happening in the secondary. You can look everywhere and see more than you will see. And I don't know if they're just getting the broadcast feed that you're getting, on the television feed you're getting at home, or if they have a special, all 22 camera that they're watching, or I don't know what those guys are watching when they call the game. But it would be tough. It would be tough. And I like watching games at home on TV. It's a different experience when you're watching it. As you know, if you're in the stadium, it's a different experience. You see more of the game, you experience more of the game, you feel more of the game. And it's tough for those guys. I feel for any of the broadcasters who are trying to call games remotely. Andrew Callahan, if the offense can only do one thing to get better, what should it be? It seems like they're still trying to find an identity. Too many options at running back and wideout. If they can only do one thing to get better, and I don't know if I totally understand. I don't want to answer your question in the wrong direction, Andrew. But to me, the thing this offense should be able to do, the thing this offense needs to be able to do, and the thing this offense, if they could do it, it would make the biggest impact, is what I talked about already. Go downfield. Attack vertically. You've got the players to do it. And you need to have offensive balance. You need to be able to run the ball and pass the ball. You need to be able to hit short passes and quick slants and screens and hitches and outs and you need to do all those things. But man, you got to be able to also take a shot. Take a shot. Jalen Barden can beat a guy down the field. Jordan Addison can beat a guy down the field. Put Shockey Jacques Louis on a post. a route like he ran against North Carolina when he has 75-yard touchdown, he can make that play. You're not going to make 6 of those plays a game, but you need to try. You need to try and hope you'll get 2 or 3 of them, because that can change the game. That can be the difference between winning and losing, is you hit a few of those big plays. Imagine if they didn't have that 75-yard touchdown pass to Shockey Jacques Louis in that North Carolina game that went to overtime. They attacked. They were aggressive. That's what you need to do. If there was one thing I could add to this offense, or I could make this offense good at, that I think they're actually capable of doing, it would be it. That would be it. A bunch of questions about Lucas Krull in here. Derbert's got a question, and Leon Moore 23 asks about him, and a few other people ask about Lucas Krull, because he had some tweets on Monday that were rather ominous in their nature, and they sort of sounded like he was bemoaning an injury. And Lucas Krull, he had 1 catch in the game, and it's actually, my notes are open to that catch right there. It's right here, 8-7 for a 6-yard pass. And you see what I wrote after that? 7 limping. Because after that play, he got up and he was hurt. And then the next snap, he stayed on the field, and he was limping again. He came off the field after that, returned for a handful of snaps at the end of the drive. That was when Pitt ended up scoring a touchdown, going up 14-10 in the second quarter. And he was kind of limping after that. He was limping the rest of the way, through the game. And so it's not hard to put 2 and 2 together there and see Lucas Krull limping around during the game, and then some ominous tweets from him that seem to indicate that he's going to miss some time, that he got hurt. And he later deleted the tweets. I mean, we should point that out as well. But it's not hard to put 2 and 2 together and say, we're probably not going to see Lucas Krull this weekend. Is my guess. You know what I mean? I'm going to guess that we don't see him out there. Now, he needs to, Lucas Krull needs to be better. He had 2 drop passes in that game. The interception that Kenny Pickett threw was thrown to Lucas Krull, although, Pickett took the blame for that, and I think rightfully so. He didn't realize that the linebacker dropped into a zone. He thought the linebacker was going to run in man coverage, and he didn't realize the linebacker was there in zone, and he picked the pass off. But Lucas Krull needs to get better. I don't know if he had first game jitters. Everything I heard about him throughout training camp was that he was a really good pass catcher. He had really soft hands. He was going to make a difference at tight end. He was going to, he was going to bring balance to the tight end position, not destroy it like the guys that came before him. And his first game, of action, because he didn't suit up for the opener against Austin Peay, he catches a big 3rd down pass. 3rd and 4, he catches a 6-yard pass. But he also drops a couple, and that's no bueno. But it's also, tight ends, man. That's kind of what they do. Brock Madonic says, any news on why freshman Javonte Royal hasn't suited up for the first 2 games? Well, Royal actually wasn't even on the sideline in the first week, the Austin Peay game. He was not present at Heinz Field. And there could be a lot of reasons for that. We know that Pitt announced that 7 players would be absent from Heinz Field for that game due to COVID protocols. Was Javonte Royal one of those 7? I don't know. They're not going to confirm any individual players. I just know he was one of about 7 or 8 guys I noticed that were not there, okay, along with guys like Rashad Weaver and Keyshawn Camp. Also, freshman DB Hunter Sellers. Now, this past week against Syracuse, Javonte Royal was back. He was in uniform. He was on the sideline. He did not play, but he was there. Hunter Sellers was not. A few other freshmen were not. One freshman came back. I think Sam Williams came back, and Emmanuel Belgrave did not. Or maybe it was flip-flop. Both of them were out for the Austin Peay game. Neither was present at Heinz Field for that game. One of those 2 freshman defensive linemen came back for the Syracuse game. I forget which one it was. I'd have to look at my notes. But as far as why Royal didn't get on the field, I would say that he was behind the other freshman, Rashad Battle, who did play in the Austin Peay game, played a lot, had like 30 snaps or 20 snaps or something like that. And then he played a handful of snaps in the Syracuse game. But a brief aside on the cornerbacks, because I've written about this, I've talked about this a little bit. They were pretty thin. Well, they are pretty thin. And they were especially thin on Saturday against Syracuse. Obviously they're already missing Damari Mathis. And so that's 1 starter down. The game against Austin Peay, they started Jason Pinnock and A.J. Woods. And A.J. Woods, I think, played more defensive snaps than any other player on the field, 33 or something like that. And, but you go forward to the Syracuse game, and A.J. Woods doesn't start. Marquez Williams starts, plays almost every snap. A.J. Woods never gets on the field on defense, plays 4 snaps or so on special teams, and that's it. Never gets on the field on defense. And it raises some questions. My guess is that A.J. Woods was banged up through the week and had limited practice time, and so he didn't play. But what that left them with was Jason Pinnock and Marquez Williams. All right, there's your top 2. But the third corner was safety Eric Hallett. Hallett was the one who came in when Marquez Williams had to tap out for a couple snaps. When they went to a nickel defense, like an actual nickel, like a 4-2-5 nickel with 3 corners and 2 safeties, as opposed to the Delta package they use on third down, that's more of a 3-3-5 with 3 safeties and 2 corners. I know this is minutia, but this is a distinction. There is a distinction to make here because the Delta and the nickel, even though the Delta is technically a nickel with 5 defensive backs, they operate differently. Like I say, the Delta has 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers, and 5 DBs. And of those 5 DBs, 3 are safeties, 2 are corners. The other way, the nickel is a 4-2-5 with 4 down linemen, 2 linebackers, 5 DBs, where 3 of the DBs are corners and the other 2 are safeties. So when they went to that nickel, the 4-2-5 alignment on Saturday against Syracuse, Eric Hallett was out there as basically the nickelback. And so I'm just wondering, like, how the hell did they wind up like this? You know? Like, how did they get so thin that they had to go with a safety at that nickelback position? You know, a safety as basically their third corner. And then Hallett got hurt, and that's when Rashad Battle came in on the Syracuse's final drive when they again went to a nickel package, the 4-2-5, and Rashad Battle was out there with Jason Pinnock and Marquez Williams. This is all a long-winded way of working in a nickelback reference and a long-winded way of saying that they're super thin at corner. They need A.J. Woods to be ready to go and get out there and play. That's the first thing. You want to be able to go 3 deep with Pinnock, Williams, and Woods. That's the first place you need to start. And then beyond that, you're going to have Rashad Battle and Javonte Royal ready to go. And I think the coaches expected Royal and Battle to have to play all season. I think they expected those guys to be on the field. I think they expected them to have to get reps because they knew how thin they were at cornerback. In the offseason, they tried to get a grad transfer cornerback. They tried to get someone who could come in with experience. There was a kid from NC State who ended up going to Notre Dame. They were trying to get him. Thought they had a chance. Nick McLeod, I think is his name. And, they weren't able to get him. McLeod ended up going to Notre Dame. So they knew they had a depth problem. They knew they needed another experienced player. Failing that, they had to get, another, if they weren't able to get a grad transfer, they knew they were going to have to probably play freshmen. And so that meant, guys like Javonte Royal, Rashad Battle. I'm guessing that we'll see Battle ahead of Royal, but I think we'll see Royal come into some games here. If not this week, then at some point in the future. And this is going to be a game that's tough on the corners. Last week's game was unique. I mean, Syracuse knew they couldn't stand up to Pitt's pass rush, and so they tried to hit a lot of quick, short passes for the most part, which meant that those corners, Pinnock and Williams, really had to be sound in their tackling. And Pinnock didn't get many opportunities. They really didn't go to his side hardly at all, obviously other than the touchdown play. But Williams got his opportunities and had like 5 tackles. I don't think he had a single missed tackle. He was really sound, which is what he needed to do. This week, you guys, I hope you did your cardio because you're going to have to run. Because Louisville is going to try and make you run a lot and chase those speedy receivers all over the place. And if ever there was a week where you would really want to have that extra cornerback depth and be able to go, a 3-man rotation or 4, it's this week because you're going to get worn down because Louisville is going to make you run a lot. And so I think they need to have A.J. Woods ready, and then Rashad Battle's got to be ready to play behind him. And Javonte Royal, and ideally if Eric Hallett's healthy, he can take some snaps there. I mean, they're going to need a bunch of guys out there. All right, let's try and get through here. We got another 10 minutes or so on this on the podcast here. S Max says the two deep at defensive tackle should be Kalijah Kancey number 1, Devin Danielson number 2. I mean, Kancey's been really productive. He's been really good out there, and in limited snaps, he's been putting up some numbers and some impressive production. I think you still like Danielson potentially as a run stopper and Kancey more as a pass rusher, but Kancey's going to get a lot of snaps. He's doing a good job. Joe Lanzo offered some grades here. The defensive line gets an A-, the defensive backs a B-, the offensive line a B-, the quarterback a C+, the receivers a B-, the tight ends a D, the running backs a C, and the special teams a D. I'm surprised you would give the special teams a D because they've struggled. I felt like there were a few plays against Syracuse where they were close to breaking them. Potentially, that Syracuse was close to breaking a long return, excuse me. And obviously the kicking game is just a mess right now. So they got to get that figured out. You don't want to lose a game because of that, obviously. Dale Gribble says Pitt's new uniforms would look really cool with their standard gold helmet. I didn't want to spend too much or really any time on uniforms, but we should talk about it real quick. Pitt, of course, has alternate uniforms this week. The Steel Panther uniforms. That's not what they're officially calling them, but that's what I am officially calling them because, when something like that, when it's new uniforms, they really are sort of community property, and you want to call it what you want to call it. You know what I mean? You want to have some ownership over it. So I'm calling them the Steel Panthers, the Steel Panther uniforms. And they're fine. They're cool. I guess it's all gray. Yeah, I agree. That'd be nice to have some more yellow trim. Not the standard gold helmet, maybe just some yellow trim on the helmet or on the jerseys or whatever. I mean, it's fine. It all comes back to this, though. Pitt had the perfect uniform with their retro throwbacks that they wore in 2016 and 2017 and 2018. And that's the long and short of it. They had the perfect uniform. There was nothing wrong with those uniforms whatsoever. And while I don't mind the new Nike uniforms that they started wearing last year and they've been wearing this year, I don't mind the alternate uniforms. Those are all fine. They had the perfect uniform. So everything is sort of below that level. And there was never a reason to change away from it. But that's just me. They like the new, cool, updated things, I guess. Let's see. TRR says, with UMass announcing it will play football this year, could that be an opponent last minute if an ACC team has COVID issues? Pitt has just one bye week and not a lot of wiggle room to postpone a game. I don't know if I don't think if you're Pitt or if you're an ACC team and one of your games gets canceled because you have COVID issues or somebody else has COVID issues, I think your main priority is rescheduling an ACC game. I don't think you need to go out and find opponents just to find opponents. There's no upside in that. You're not selling tickets to it unless the ACC demands that you go find an opponent to play just so you have content to fill. Just so you can have product to fill the TV time slots. Short of that, I don't see any reason to make an effort to go out and find an opponent. Austin P, I understood. You want a warm-up game. You want a scrimmage. You want somebody to get you ready. You want that kind of, before you jump into ACC play. But I don't think there's any rush to get anybody else on the schedule. Jim Fiorenzo. Excuse me, Jim. I apologize on your last name. Any update on Daniel Carter availability for Saturday? No, I don't have any. Hope we see him. I think he needs to get out there. He can help a lot. Colin Towle. Say Alex Kessman misses his first field goal attempt this week. Do we see the freshman kicker? No, I don't think so. I think Narduzzi's going to stick with Kessman. He likes to have faith in his kickers. He likes to have confidence in his kickers. And I think he'll stick with Kessman. It'll have to get worse before Narduzzi makes that move, I think. Royce Beacom asks, where's Taysier Mack? Addison is good, but we would be better if complemented by Mack, or vice versa, I should say. And yes, the dropped passes are going to turn Pat Narduzzi's hair whiter than Mark Whipple's. Taysier Mack has been hurt the first couple weeks. He should be back this week. I think it'll help the receiving core. But like I say, they've got some guys who have really emerged, I think. I think they've got – I like this receiving core. Yeah, absolutely. Taysier Mack can help them, and getting him back in the mix will be good. But, if you want to go out there again with Addison, Jacques Louis, Barden, Turner, Wayne, I think you can make some plays with that group. Leon Moore 23 asks, will Chase Pine get more playing time? Seems like he was flying around making plays. Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, he's got 2 tackles in 2 games. 1 solo tackle and a pass breakup. I'm starting to wonder what's going to become of Chase Pine. I thought as a redshirt senior, I thought it was going to be his year. I thought he was going to step up and have a big season and, really kind of go out with a bang. He hasn't. He lost the starting job to a redshirt sophomore. I think he was expected to be the starter coming into training camp, but Wendell Davis outplayed him and earned the job. And Wendell Davis hasn't been great. I don't think he's lighting the world on fire, but he's got more than 2 tackles. He's got 7 tackles in 2 games. Well, and they're all tackle assists. But, I don't know. Not sure it's going to happen for Chase Pine. He might be a backup. Let's see. Joe Lanzel says the wrong running backs are getting the carries. Well, Joe, I don't know. Yeah, I'd like to see more of Israel Bonaconda. Like I said, I'd like to see Daniel Carter play. But, they're playing the guys they have right now, I guess. I don't know if I would say I'd like to see Todd Sibley work out of the base offense, not just the Wildcat, but the coaches apparently don't feel like he is up to that task for whatever reason. So I don't know what to tell you, about that. So I don't think it's going to happen for him. So it comes down to the Davises, Carter, and Bonaconda. And I'd like to see more of Carter. Like I said, I think he's the most intriguing guy right now. Anthony Tennyson, Whipple's play calling is very suspect because I'm not sure if he knows how to set up plays off of one another. He doesn't know how to set up play. I don't know. He's been around a long time. I think he knows how to call an offense, and he's called some productive offenses. He's gotten some gaudy stats for individual players. I think he understands how to get the ball to his playmakers. He needs... I think maybe the biggest thing he needs right now is faith that his team, his quarterback and his receivers, can execute a vertical passing game. And I'm gonna reserve judgment, and I'm gonna see if they take a different approach this week. But Louisville can be had downfield. Louisville can be had if you attack them with, attack them vertically. Louisville can be beat that way. I want to see if they do it. They did it against Austin Peay. They went out and made a point of doing it against Austin Peay. They did not make a point of doing it against Syracuse. I want to see what they do against Louisville. I might have questions after that if they don't. RJ Seaman 38, should Whipple be in the skybox to better see what the defense is giving Pitt? This is one where I'm going to defer to the guy who's I don't know how old he is and how long he's been coaching. If he likes to be on the sideline, I'm going to let him do it. I'm not going to force him up into the press box. I think if he felt like he could see things better and call a better game from the press box, I believe he would be up there. I think he likes to be on the sideline, and he feels like it gives him the best perspective. Let's see. Scroll through some questions here. Dale Gribble, should Andre Powell be let go? He's done a horrible job recruiting running backs. That's one of those things where, first of all, you don't always have the position coach as exclusively responsible for recruiting a position. And so you don't put all of the blame for the running back situation on Andre Powell. But at the same time, it's weird how Pitt has just not recruited running backs all that well. They just, they had success obviously with Quadri Olson and Darren Hall in 2018, but that wasn't, those guys weren't recruited by this staff. And since then, they haven't really brought in anyone who really, moves the needle a whole lot. A.J. Davis, Vincent Davis. We'll see what happens with Daniel Carter. I think there are definite question marks about this staff and their recruiting. I think there are definite question marks about, how they've done with that position. They need some guys to step up. step up this week. All right, I'm getting distracted by too many things. There's too many things sort of floating around here. So, and we got up to the hour mark. So I think we'll call it a day. Listen, make sure while you're here watching the stream, I like all the everybody who likes the stream. I appreciate it. But if you're watching the stream on YouTube, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you're listening to the podcast later in the week, go to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We want to get those numbers up. I say this every week, and I really appreciate everyone who's subscribed. You get a notification when we go live. We get a notification when we post a video, just that way you can stay up to date on Pitt stuff. And I want to get those subscribers up on YouTube. So go to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, make sure you check out the website Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It is the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Panther-Lair.com. Make sure you check that out and go to the message boards where you can talk to a lot of other Pitt fans. Panther-Lair.com. Homefield Apparel is, they've got some great stuff. I've talked about them a lot. Homefield-Apparel.com. Some great Pitt shirts and sweatshirts, high quality material, and some great logos and great designs. I mean, they've done a great job there. Homefield-Apparel.com. So go give them a check out. Thanks so much for tuning in on the live stream and listening to the podcast. Saturday morning, 8 a.m., 93.7 The Fan. We got the Panthers Insider Show, so make sure you check that out. And, you can listen to the Pitt game on the Fan, noon, kickoff against Louisville. Everything between now and then, make sure you stay tuned to Panther-Lair.com. Hope you have a great week, great rest of the week, and we will talk to you again later in the week.